Hey guys, how's it going? It's Brian doing an airsoft review today on this lovely February afternoon. It's snowing out, and I figured I'd just do a quick review on this guy, which is a G&G TR-16 R4. So G&G has had a few reiterations of this AEG over the past decade. I believe the first generation of the TR-16 came out in 2010, and then the next generation was around 2018, and this is the most recent generation that came out in December of 2021. They go for about $365 on e-bike, and they're considered a pro line of G&G, or a top tech is their official term for it, in comparison to the budget-friendly G&G Combat Machine line, which is G&G's sport line. So when I purchased this AEG, I was in the market for an M4 series rifle that was in the carbine format but wasn't a short-barreled version. And I wanted one that had an RIS, rail system. But I wanted one that had a classical look, or relatively speaking, a classical look. So this is very similar to an M4 series that you would see in, the Iraq War in 2003 and up until, 2008, 2009, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of newer AEGs that are coming out that have a lot of like flash and glam. Like you have the M4s that have the key mod system on them, and some of them have like this colored metal, and that's like pink and blue and red, and I'm just, to each their own, but I'm not really into that. I'm into more of like the milsim aspect of airsoft. So this was what I was looking for. And there weren't a lot of companies that were making them, surprisingly. When I looked, this was really the only one on the market that was actually in stock. Anything else just showed as out of stock or whatnot. But so it's a basic M4 with an LE style stock, a basic RIS system, and it's G&G's top tech, so it has a souped up gearbox as far as G&G goes, and it shoots roughly, I chronoed it, and it was shooting 312 FPS with 0.25 gram BBs. I'm not sure of the joules conversion for it, but it shoots pretty hard and pretty accurate when I tested it out. So I fielded it once or twice, and I've been pretty happy with it, but there are a lot of pros and cons to this AEG, so we're going to get into that. So before we get into the pros and cons of this AEG, I'm just going to go over the build material as far as what it's made out of. So starting off from the back, you have the LE stock, which is plastic, sling mount is metal, buffer tube is metal, lower receiver is plastic, upper receiver is metal, the Readymag is metal, lower receiver is, the pistol grip is plastic, the lower receiver itself is metal. Sorry about that. The RIS system is obviously metal. The front sight is metal. Barrel is metal. Flash hider is plastic. Rear sight is metal. Charging handle is metal. If we flip it over, oh, this guy's heavy. Obviously, you can see more. Dust cover's metal. Bolt is aluminum, I believe. And you have your triggers metal, mag release is metal. And that's basically it. Non-functional forward assist is metal. And that's basically it for material. So, and in regards to pros and cons, this AEG is very polarizing. So I'm going to start with the cons to get them out of the way like I normally do. So the first thing you notice about this AEG, and its most prominent feature, is the Readymag system that it comes with. Now, I have mine set up to be completely functional as a Readymag system, but when I ordered it, the way Evike described it, and I guess G&G described it, was the Readymag system was actually where the battery was supposed to go. As you can clearly see, I have the battery wired to this PEC box, and that's where it's housed, so I'm obviously not using it for that. And that is because if you're familiar with Readymag systems, you'll understand this. But so just to show you, so this is a shell of a magazine, which is where your battery was supposed to go. That obviously didn't work for me. And here's why. So with a Readymag system, you have the Readymag, which is, just to describe this in case you're not familiar with it, just a caveat real quick. Readymag system is to allow you to change magazines a lot faster than reaching into your pouch or your mag pouch and pull out a mag. Instead, you can just drop the one mag and pop the other right in. And it's supposed to cut down on time. Heavily debated in the real steel community whether or not it's actually beneficial. It's definitely beneficial, or the only application it's beneficial is if you're a lefty like me. If you're a righty, it's a little bit more difficult. But anyway, I digress. We're going to go back to it. So the Readymag was supposed to house your battery, but the way a Readymag system is that when you press the mag release, it releases your mag, your functional mag in the mag well that you're using. And then if you press it a little harder, it releases this magazine. Now you do have to push the mag release rather hard to actually get the mag to release in the Readymag magwell. But if you're familiar with airsoft, you know that in the back of your head, you're going to be worrying, like, let's say this was wired in here, and let's say you accidentally got a little too carried away and pushed the mag release a little too hard. That means that in correlation with gravity, this mag with your battery is going to drop out, and it's going to yank your wires, and it's probably going to damage your connection from the wire to the motor. So I was not having that. I was hoping that this was like disabled, or it was like sequential, or there was like a standalone release on this, since they were doing that. And that's my biggest complaint about this AEG, was that G&G's R&D department did not think this through when they engineered it. Like, no one would want, there is no reason why you would want both of these magazines to release at the same time. If you're housing your batteries in here, you're going to want this to release your mag separately. You're not going to want to have one mechanism that accesses both these mag releases. So immediately when I got it, I tinkered with it for a minute, and I thought there's something I was missing, and I could not see anything I was missing, and I was furious. So I purchased a PEC 2 box. It's a dummy. It's a dummy case, so it's completely hollowed out. And I had to basically disconnect the fuse on this, which we'll get into that. There's a fuse on this, which I don't like. But I had to disconnect the fuse and then fish it out of the mag release, or out of the Readymag. And you're not going to be able to see it because it's behind the Readymag. But the battery wire is actually wired. They drilled a hole in the upper receiver, and it goes through that hole and out here. So obviously I couldn't wire it to the rear without some modification. So I just opted to, wrap the wire in some electrical tape and then just wire it into a PEC box and house the battery up here in the front. So while it's not beautiful, I think it's a pretty sleek design for what it is. And that is my biggest beef, regardless. I think that G&G should have been upfront about this, or they should have actually engineered it so that you would actually be able to practically house your batteries in the Readymag magwell. So that's my first issue. Going on to issue number 2, this is an electric blowback airsoft rifle. So G&G nor Evike marketed it as this, or advertised it as such. I had no idea this was an electric blowback until I plugged a battery in and was like, ooh, that has a nice metallic clank. And I was like, I wonder why. I was like, none of my other AEG M4s sound like this. And as I flipped it over, I realized, hey, the bolt is going back and forth. So that was a surprise to me. And while I personally don't mind it, I know the electric blowback aspect of certain M4s that have it it's a very hot issue, and it's a controversial one. A lot of people don't like it. They consider it a gimmick, and they say that, if it breaks, it complicates repairs, and it also drains your battery. Because again, having to pull that bolt back, that's just adding that means your motor is going to be requesting additional power from the battery. So, or your gearbox, I should say, and the motor, but you get what I'm saying. So I personally don't mind it. I actually really like it. I actually enjoy the electric blowback aspect. It's not like a gas blowback, but it's a nice little touch, and it definitely makes the trigger pull a little bit more satisfying. But so that's another strike on e-Vike's part, is that I'm not sure if G&G's to blame or e-Vike is, because whoever was responsible for creating the specs and the description for this AEG should be at fault. But it's an electric blowback, and it doesn't appear to be disclosed on the websites that it's advertised on. So that's another strike, even though I like it. Third is the build quality. So if this were a combat machine, I would not be listing this as a con, because again, with a budget AEG, you're sacrificing a little bit of build quality for price. But for a $360, what's essentially a top tech AEG, even though G&G didn't advertise it, it's not a combat machine. It's advertised as a G&G. So I would not expect the front RIS to be wobbly. So it's not wobbly, but it shifts. Like I have a vertical foregrip on here, and it's not as bad now that I have this sight mount elevator on there, but when I had it alone without it, like the wrist would like kind of shift. Like if my hand was the RIS, it would shift a little bit this way or that way. If I was holding the foregrip down here like this, it would shift a little bit. Now the barrel itself is completely sturdy. It's just the RIS around the barrel that shifted a little bit. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough for me to say this should not be happening on a $360 AEG by G&G. So that was my first strike on build quality. My second strike was this retaining nut on the buffer tube. This was a little bit loose, and it still comes loose periodic, like every so often, and I have to take a set of pliers, and that's actually why I have my pliers up here, just to torque it down a little bit so that this is nice and tight, or else the buffer tube and the stock wobble a little bit. Again, that should not happen. I think that for a G&G that's not a sport line or a combat machine version, that should not be happening. So those are really my three gripes and my cons. And, if it wasn't for the fact that this AEG performs so well, I would rate it, 2 out of 5 or even 1 out of 5 stars. But we'll get into the pros now. So the pros are what save this AEG from the cons I just listed and make it a reasonable choice if you're getting into airsoft. I'm very partial to G&G AEGs. I've never had any issues with them as far as performance and reliability. Actually, I have a bare bones M4 over there in my little container that is, I don't know, it's probably like an 06, 07 G&G, and it still runs bone stock. Anyway, so as far as performance, this AEG shoots hard and accurately. I'm not sure if it was just because I had been fielding my saw so much, but when I fielded this guy my first time, I was getting really accurate kills and really consistent hits with it. So right out the box, the fact that it's fun to shoot with the electric blowback mechanism, and the fact that it shoots accurately and performs really well, even with just like a 7.2 or 7.4 lipo, that saved it. I was like, okay, this is pretty awesome. And the fact that it does look really nice aesthetically, it has an H and K style selector switch with the icon. So you have, safe, an X over the bullet, semi, one bullet, and then, the full, it has, 30, and then the bullet to represent that. So that's kind of a nice touch. It has like an H and K kind of accent to it. Overall, it's super heavy. Now, I know I have a bunch of attachments on here, and I'm sure the Readymag adds to it too, but this guy gets pretty heavy. So that kind of, if that's your thing, it does add a realistic weight to it. The gearbox is pretty smooth. I didn't need to do any modifications on it. The videos I saw online kind of mentioned that earlier generations, you would need to adjust the motor seating a little bit because it was a little whiny. Mine didn't have that, at least not that I can tell. But, other than that, so at the end of the day, is this worth it? So if you're like me and you were looking for something specific, as I said, an early 2000s era M4 setup with an RIS system, this could be up your alley. If you're looking for it to compete with other AEGs in that price range, maybe not. I know the Crytacs are a little more expensive, but their build quality is definitely more solid. G&P's a little more solid. For G&G, for something that's non-combat machine, that's their top tech, I feel like this should be a little bit better for the price they were asking. And I think that it should have been more well thought out when it came to how they engineered it and regarding their research and development department. So I like it. I'd encourage you to actually explore it a little bit and consider it, but keep in mind the cons that I mentioned. If you're just looking for something to change up your armory a little bit, something that you may not be using constantly, I've been using this primarily and have had no issue, but if this is going to be your primary, if this is going to be like your one big purchase for airsoft, you may want to look at other models. But if you're like me and you were just looking for something to add to your armory that was reliable and shot well and that you could use on a regular basis, it's still a good choice. So that's my 2 cents on the G&G TR-16 R4. Please leave any questions or comments below, and feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video.